From Grace Jones slapping a talk show host.
Does he really want to?
Well, don't turn your back on me anymore.
I can't look at you. Now, hold.
To Mike Tyson's tense live TV interview with New York sportscaster Russ Salzberg.
Mike, why do you have to talk like that?
Well, I'm talking to you the way I want to talk to you. Do you have a problem? Turn off your station.
You know what? I think we'll end the discussion right now.
Then we could.
You got it. Have a nice fight, Mike.
Off.
Some celebrity interviews don't just go off the rails, they take careers down with them. Here are 10 times black celebs ruined their careers in interviews.
James Brown erupts outside the South Carolina courthouse because he's been forbidden to drive. His license suspended after arrest for driving under the influence of PCP, a powerful and dangerous drug.
He was on his way to destruction. He was about to kill himself or somebody kill him. Because it had gotten that bad.
That man acting crazy? That's James Brown, one of the biggest music legends of the 20th century. But he also had plenty of run-ins with the law, including the famous 1988 incident.
Grammy-winning soul singer James Brown is about to embark on a South American tour, but it's this tour that prompted his latest brush with the law. Brown says that he and his wife had an argument because she wasn't going on the tour with him. Adrian Brown and South Carolina police say that in the argument, it resulted, as a matter of fact, in Brown assaulting his wife with a lead pipe and firing a gun at a car that she was in.
Not long after, he appeared on Sonia Live in LA, and to this day, his reaction to the charges remains one of the most bizarre interviews ever recorded.
James Brown, how did all of this trouble begin?
Living in America. Nothing wrong.
The reporter, Sonia Friedman, caught off guard, but still determined, tried to bring things back to reality.
Oh, you're not in any difficulty, but you're out on bond.
No, I'm not.
Have all the charges been dropped?
Yeah, I'm out on love.
Well, are you out on love or out of love? Which is it?
Out on love.
From the very first seconds, Brown turned the interview into a spectacle. He refused to acknowledge the allegations, laughed off serious questions, and redirected the conversation at every turn. Friedman pressed on, hoping to get a serious response.
Now, James, this isn't the first time you and your wife have had a problem. Are the two of you going to be able to work this out?
Let's talk about some music.
You want to talk about music and you don't want to talk about what happened?
No, it's all over.
Rather than deny the accusations, Brown acted as if they didn't even exist. Instead, he kept promoting his upcoming South American tour, listing the cities he'd be visiting with the same level of enthusiasm as if he were announcing a concert, rather than answering questions about an alleged violent crime.
When are you leaving?
We're leaving tomorrow.
And where are you going?
Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo.
At this point, the interview had completely gone off the rails. Every time Friedman tried to bring up the allegations, Brown overpowered the conversation with his signature bravado and charm.
No, Dankeschön. I'm concerned because there's nothing wrong.
And what are you going to say to your fans when they ask you some questions about it?
I'm going to say I feel good. Papa's got a brand new bag. It's a man's world.
It was both surreal and unhinged. Brown wasn't just avoiding the conversation, he was turning it into a show. Then came another bizarre moment. When Friedman brought up the topic of his pending divorce, she expected at least some degree of seriousness. But Brown, still grinning, delivered another unexpected response.
Eligible?
Yes, I'm singing. I want to mingle.
You want to mingle?
Yeah.
Now, the women love you when you get out there. Why do you think that is?
What'd you say?
The women love you when you get out there.
Why is that, ladies?
Well, I'm asking you.
Huh? Because I look good.
At this point, Friedman had given up. It was clear that Brown wasn't going to acknowledge the legal troubles hanging over him. Instead, he was putting on a performance, his own version of damage control.
I feel good.
And you sing good.
And make love good.
Oh. Well, there we are. We don't have to ask anybody else. We got that from the source. There you are.
By the end of the interview, Brown had successfully dodged every single question about his arrest. and Friedman was clearly done with him.
I want to thank you for being with us today
Wait
and
a
giving
minute,
us an
I just got
opportunity.
here.
Oh, is there something more you want to say that we haven't
I want
covered?
to say a lot of things.
Okay,
I
go
love
ahead.
You. I love America. I love everybody.
Well,
I feel good.
It sounds to me as though you're not troubled by any of this at all.
This is a man's world.
But if James Brown showed how unpredictable live television could be, Grace Jones took it to a whole new level.
Now, hold on. Hold on, just a minute. Just a
Move your
minute.
chair.
Grace Jones was not someone you ignored. Anyone who had spent even a few minutes in her presence knew that. She commands attention, not just with her striking looks, but with her energy, her voice, her presence.
Taking them off, I couldn't get them over the heels. I would have had to lay down and say, Tom, help me out here. You know, I mean, they're quite high, getting them off.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when she appeared on The Russell Hardy Show in 1981, beside British photographer Walter Poucher, and realized that Hardy had his back turned to her for most of the interview, it was only a matter of time before something happened.
Perfume. She notices the deterioration.
Are you wearing perfume? Can you smell her at all?
No, I've got my own body odor perfume.
Let's try and keep it on a slightly higher level, if we may.
It had been happening for minutes. Hardy, seated between Jones and Poucher, barely acknowledged her presence. Instead, he stayed fully turned toward the other guest, completely engrossed in conversation. Jones, at first, gave subtle signals. She shifted in her chair. She leaned forward. At one point, she even motioned for Hardy to adjust his position. He ignored it. Then, Hardy tried to brush past the tension, and that's when things escalated.
Perfume at the
No,
I'm
I
going to
very
leave,
seldom
right?
do
No,
wear
minute,
perfume.
if you turn your back
No,
to me
I've
one more
got-
minute.
I have got to
this
talk
has
to
been
this.
going on too long already.
Well, it's only going to go on about another 6 minutes, and you're going to have another little part of it soon.
Maybe I should go right now.
No,
then.
don't go right now unless you really want to.
Was she joking? Was she serious? Even Hardy wasn't sure. But before he could figure it out, Jones acted. She reached over and smacked him on the shoulder. Lev. On air.
Unless you really want to.
Well, don't turn your back on me anymore.
I can't look at you. Now, hold on, just a minute. Just a
Move
minute.
your chair back a bit or something. Gee.
It wasn't a violent attack, but it wasn't a playful tap either. This was a power move. Grace Jones was letting the world know. You do not ignore Grace Jones.
What I am taught, can you listen to what he is saying? Because he's talking about his perfume making.
I love it. I wear 4 different kinds of perfume.
Are you wearing any perfume at this precise moment?
No.
Well, now wait a minute. Let me just ask
I'm
you one
wearing the
question. Then I
ones
will
from last night. I had 4 different perfumes on last night and I still have them on.
Just allow me then to ask him one more question, then I will come back to you, right? Hold on for 1 second.
But by then, it didn't matter. The moment had already gone down in history. Grace Jones had a reputation for pushing boundaries. But even in her wildest moments, nothing compared to what happened to Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor was no stranger to pushing boundaries.
Spear chucker, white trash, jungle bunny,
But on the Dick Cavett Show in 1985, he did something few comedians ever dared. He stripped away the laughter and confronted the raw truth of his past. What started as a lighthearted exchange quickly unraveled into a candid, unfiltered moment of truth. As the interview began, Cavett and Pryor exchanged jokes about memory lapses and awkward moments. But just as the audience settled into their laughter, Pryor made an unexpected turn.
Because, sometimes people look at us like infallible, like we're not human and never had a life, like there's people like are listening now that have things in their life that they'll never talk about.
That's right.
And it always helps to talk about it with someone.
This wasn't the Richard Pryor audiences we're used to, the one who could turn pain into punchlines. Instead, this was a man confronting his deepest scars in real time. But Pryor wasn't done revealing the dark realities of his life. As the conversation continued, Cavett brought up a well-known but often dismissed fact about Pryor's upbringing.
Now, you know, I have read that you were born in a brothel, and I figured this is Pryor putting on an interviewer.
No, I was born in my mother's womb.
Well, yes,
and we lived in I guess you call it a brothel. We called it a whorehouse.
Yeah.
But it was home to me.
Pryor described how growing up in that environment shaped his understanding of the world, how he struggled to relate to other children who weren't surrounded by prostitution, drugs, and violence.
Another way, when I got to grown and we moved, and I met kids that didn't know about that at all, and didn't talk like I talked, or I couldn't understand it. And it took me a while to stop hitting on their mothers. Stop that, Richard, stop it!
The joke landed, but the underlying pain was impossible to ignore. Pryor was exposing the contradictions of his life, the trauma that made him who he was, yet also left him broken. As the interview progressed, Cavett addressed what many had speculated for years.
They always refer to the dark side of Richard Pryor, the rage that is still there, the anger, and so on. What would it take to get rid of that? Is it specific people you'd like to get revenge on in some way? Is it just...
But Pryor's response was unexpected. For a man whose comedy often carried undertones of anger, it was revealing to hear him admit that holding on to hatred was something he couldn't tolerate. But the demons he fought weren't just emotional. They were chemical.
And if I don't drink or use dope, then he stays asleep. I build him a little house. I said, just leave me alone, please.
Cavett pressed further, asking if Pryor ever faced temptation from those who didn't take his sobriety seriously. Pryor's answer was sharp and unfiltered.
To say to you after you tell him you're alcoholic, you're no alcoholic. You drink a little bit too much. Here. No, thank you. No.
But there are people who will do that, aren't there?
Yeah.
Are they necessarily people who want to bring you to their level, or are they just trying to...
No, they don't want to drink alone.
The audience erupted into laughter, but the reality was far from funny. Pryor was admitting how fragile his sobriety was, how the wrong influence could send him spiraling back into addiction. Richard Pryor had a way of making people uncomfortable. His unpredictability kept audiences on edge, never quite knowing what he'd say next. But while Pryor's energy was chaotic, Prince created tension in a completely different way.
I haven't built any walls around myself. I'm just like anyone else. I need love and water. And I don't really consider myself a superstar.
When he appeared on American Bandstand in 1980, the audience expected a fresh-faced young artist eager to make an impression. Instead, they got this.
I learned to do this in Minneapolis.
Where?
Yeah, I mean, this is not the kind of music that comes from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Clark paused, waiting for more, but Prince just stared back at him. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then, just as Clark tried to recover, Prince shut him down again.
The fact that you made a couple of demonstration records when you were a teenager, you're barely more than that now, are you?
19.
19. Well, you got another year to go before you graduate. How many years ago did you make these demos and then have offers on them? And why would you turn it down?
They wouldn't let me produce myself.
It wasn't just what Prince said. It was how he said it. No explanation, no elaboration. Just a quiet, matter-of-fact answer that made it clear. At 19, he already had complete control over his own image. Clark, trying to lighten the mood, asked about Prince's ability to play multiple instruments. But instead of engaging, Prince delivered a response so blunt, it caught everyone off guard.
Did somebody tell me you played every instrument on this album? Is that correct?
Maybe.
There was no smile, no sign of whether he was joking. The audience shifted uncomfortably, unsure if they were witnessing shyness or pure defiance. And then came the final moment that sealed the interview's legacy.
How many instruments do you play?
Thousands.
Moments will be with you. Thousands? No. Literally, do you play all the instruments?
A lot.
In just a few minutes, Prince had turned a standard interview into something unforgettable. And the most remarkable part, he barely spoke at all. Prince left people speechless without saying much at all. But Suge Knight, he had the opposite approach. When he entered Jimmy Kimmel Live. In 2003, he made sure everyone in the room felt his presence. With a Cuban cigar in hand and his feet up on the table, Suge looked more like he was holding court than giving an interview. And when he noticed Jimmy Kimmel's unusual outfit, he couldn't resist making a joke.
Man, I love your show. Right, what you're doing. Thank you. Right, that's why I'm coming here. Fresh out of jail, I'll come check you out, right?
Right.
Why the bulletproof vest?
Oh, it's not. Oh, no, that's just it's you know, style. You've been in the can for a while.
Kimmel tried to keep things light, but there was tension in the air. The bulletproof vest he wore wasn't just a gag. He clearly knew who he was dealing with. And then, out of nowhere, Suge said something that left everyone stunned.
It's a new thing, right?
Yeah.
See, if somebody gonna do something about it, see, technology is so high, right?
Right.
So if you shoot somebody, you go to jail forever. Some kids, you don't want to go to jail forever, right? So they got this new thing out there. People sell them all the time. They got this stuff they get blood from somebody with AIDS, and then they shoot you with it.
Kimmel's face dropped. The audience groaned, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. And then Suge, with a smirk, threw in a name that made the moment even more chilling.
Yeah.
He's there, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, no.
Okay. Wait, right in the mood.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Suge's terror alert level just went from elevated to high.
Kimmel froze, putting his head in his hands. Did Suge Knight just admit to something? Or was he just playing into his own legend? Either way, the damage was done. Eazy-E, the legendary rapper from NWA, had died from complications related to AIDS in 1995. His sudden diagnosis and rapid decline had always sparked speculation. But no one expected Suge Knight to say this, especially not on live television. Suge Knight made people uncomfortable with what he said, but Mike Tyson, he made people uncomfortable with how he said it.
Champion of the world, Mike Tyson. Then I'll illustrate my reign with bloodshed and pain. Then everybody will fear me.
By 1999, Tyson had nothing left to prove inside the ring. But outside of it, his interviews were becoming just as intense as his fights. And when he sat down for a live TV interview with New York sportscaster Russ Salzberg, it was clear from the start that Tyson had no patience for small talk.
Mike, Francois Botha, 6-1 underdog. Are there any concerns on your part?
I don't know anything about that. I don't know nothing about numbers. I just know what I can do.
How about
kill this mother?
Salzberg tried to keep things professional, but Tyson wasn't interested in playing along. After nearly 2 years out of the ring, most fighters would have been asked about their comeback strategy. But Tyson had no time for hypotheticals.
Hey, how about the 19 months off?
What about it? What about it?
Does it pose any problem to you?
We'll see. I doubt it seriously.
Tyson's aggression was boiling over, and Salzberg tried to get him to reflect on it. He brought up Tyson's past fights, his notorious temper, and whether all that rage was helping him or hurting him. But Tyson didn't care about philosophy. He was a fighter, and to him, the answer was simple.
You know, who cares? We're in a fight anyway. What does it matter?
But Salzberg kept pushing. He brought up Evander Holyfield, the infamous ear-biting incident, and whether Tyson's emotions were getting the best of him. But at this point, the interview wasn't about boxing anymore. Tyson was done answering questions, and then he made it very clear that this conversation was over.
Mike, why do you have to talk like that?
Well, I'm talking to you the way I want to talk to you. Do you have a problem? Turn off your station.
You know what? I think we'll end the discussion right now.
Then we could.
You got it. Have a nice fight, Mike.
Go off.
Tyson didn't care about public perception. He didn't care about being liked. And when fight night came, he backed up every word, knocking out Botha in the 5th round. Mike Tyson's rage was unpredictable, but it was also controlled. It had a target, and it had a purpose. For O.J. Simpson, his emotions weren't about fighting in the ring. They were about something far more sinister.
I hate to say this, but this is hypothetical. I'm sorry. I know we got to back up again.
It's okay. I want to back up. This is hard. I know. I want to back up to
try to make people think that I'm a
March 11th, 2018. More than 2 decades after Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were found murdered, O.J. sat down for an interview. He called it a hypothetical, but from the moment he started speaking, it became clear. This wasn't just a theory, and when he described the scene, one chilling moment proved it all.
You wrote in the book, I had never seen so much blood in my life.
O.J. paused. He hesitated. Then he said something he could never take back.
It's hard for me to describe it. I'm telling you, I don't think any two people could be murdered the way they were without everybody being covered in blood. And of course, I think we've all seen the grisly pictures after. So yeah, I think everything would have been covered in blood.
This wasn't a man guessing. This was a man remembering. But to understand why this moment was so damning, we need to go back. O.J. started his story with a mysterious character, Charlie. According to O.J., Charlie showed up at his house that night and told him something was happening at Nicole's home that he wouldn't believe.
This guy Charlie shows up, the guy who I recently become friends with, and I don't know why he had been by Nicole's house, but it told me you wouldn't believe what's going on over there.
O.J. said they got into the Bronco together. Then he drove to Nicole's home, and that's when things got dark. He described parking in the alley. He said he put on a cap and gloves.
You reached under the seat for?
A knife. I always kept a knife in the car for the crazies and stuff because you can't travel with a gun. And I remember Charlie saying, you ain't bringing that. And I didn't, right? But I believe he took it.
Charlie took the knife?
Yeah, in the book.
From here, O.J.'s story started falling apart. He said he walked through the back gate. He saw Nicole inside, candles lit, music playing, until Ron Goldman showed up.
I may have seen him around, but I really didn't recognize him to be anyone. And in the mood I was in, I started having words with him.
He says to you, I just came by to return a pair of glasses. Judy left them at the restaurant.
Yeah, words to that effect, yes.
And
I don't know if I believed it or didn't believe it. It was pretty much immaterial because, I was more concerned about everything that was going on.
O.J. admitted that he started arguing with Ron. Then Nicole came outside, furious, demanding that O.J. leave. And that's when everything escalated.
A verbal fight. Got a little loud, and by that time, Nicole had come out, and we started having words about who is this guy, why is he here, what's going on.
She says, this is my house, get the F out of here.
O.J. claimed Charlie was watching everything, that he followed Ron to make sure there was no problem, and that he still had the knife. But then, something changed.
You write about removing a glove before taking the knife from Charlie?
I had no conscious memory of doing that, but obviously I must have because they found the glove there.
O.J. claimed he blacked out, that when he came to, the scene was horrific.
You wrote in the book, I had never seen so much blood in my life.
Yes.
You're covered, the scene. Can you describe it?
It's hard for me to describe it, I'm telling you. I don't think any two people could be murdered the way they were without everybody being covered in blood.
His wording was chilling. The host pressed further, reminding O.J. that he wrote about removing a glove before grabbing the knife.
You write about removing a glove before taking the knife from Charlie?
I had no conscious memory of doing that, but obviously I must have because they found the glove there.
O.J. insisted this was all just a hypothetical. But when the interview aired, people weren't convinced. Because the way he told it, it didn't sound like theory. It sounded like memory. Anyway, O.J. Simpson had a hypothetical. But Orlando Brown has had something worse, a reality that made no sense at all. By 2018, Orlando Brown had been out of the spotlight for years, but when he finally returned to TV, it wasn't for a comeback. It was for an intervention. And from the moment he sat down with Dr. Phil, it was clear that something was very, very wrong.
There are long-term effects when we do crystal meth, things that can really affect the neurotransmitters in our brain. Whenever we do certain drugs, it can connect half a thought with another half a thought, so it can get pretty confusing.
Dr. Phil tried to keep things grounded, but Orlando wasn't interested in reality. His speech was scattered, his thoughts were jumbled, and at times, it seemed like even he wasn't sure what he was trying to say.
And I think there's a real good chance that what you've been through has caused you to have some neurological disruption.
Well, no, not necessarily. Me personally, not to cut you off, me personally, it's not about, saying effort or anything.
Most people expected an emotional breakthrough, a moment of clarity where Orlando would finally admit he needed help. But that's not what happened. Instead, Orlando pushed back, insisting that he was fine and that he had everything under control.
That help?
I'm 4 years sober for a reason. I just now got out of rehab. I just now got out of ER. I'm not doing no more time away from my kids other than I need to. I appreciate that, but me being free after being locked behind bars for no reason and being set up, I can't dedicate another 90 days of being monitored all my life.
But then, Dr. Phil started asking questions that Orlando wasn't prepared to answer. Simple ones, like how many kids he had and what their names were. And suddenly, the interview took a turn.
How old are your kids?
I got a 2-year-old, 5-year-old, he's 8 and 11.
All right, now, and what's the 2-year-old's name?
2-year-old, still in the belly. Still in the belly, we don't know yet.
Okay. And what's the 5-year-old's name?
That's Mason.
And the 11-year-old?
Charlotte.
Dr. Phil called him out on it, but Orlando didn't back down. He doubled down.
I asked you before if you had kids. You said, yes, I have 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, what are their ages? You said 2, 5, 11, and 16.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what's the 2-year-old's name? You said Shyler.
Okay.
The 5-year-old is Mason.
Right.
The 11-year-old is John.
Right.
16-year-old, I don't know. I got to find out.
Right.
I asked you this time. You said the 2-year-old don't know the name because it's still in the belly.
That's because I have a baby on the way as well.
By the end of the interview, Orlando had rejected help, refused rehab, and walked away convinced that he didn't need saving. But to everyone watching, the reality was obvious. This wasn't just a TV moment. This was a man in crisis. And the worst part, the people who knew him best had seen it coming for years. Orlando Brown's downfall in the industry was blamed on mental illness. But when Hollywood turned on Monique, they didn't call her crazy. They called her difficult.
We got labeled as difficult because I said one word, and that was no. Now, I said no to some very powerful people.
She was shut out, silenced, and blackballed by some of the most powerful names in Hollywood, until she decided to expose it on The Steve Harvey Show. At first, people thought it was just another Hollywood feud. But when Monique started speaking out, the real story unraveled. And that's when people realized this wasn't just about her. She was exposing something much bigger.
Now, I said no to some very powerful people. I said no to Oprah Winfrey. I said no to Tyler Perry. I said no to Lee Daniels. And I said no to Lionsgate.
It sounded simple. Monique said no to a press tour. But in Hollywood, saying no to the wrong person can cost you everything.
Y'all knew I was not wrong. Each one of you said to me, Monique, you're not wrong. And when I heard you go on the air and you said, my sister done burned too many bridges, and there's nothing I can do for her now. Steve, do you know how hurt I was?
But they didn't. For years, Monique, an Oscar-winning actress, was shut out of Hollywood, not because of talent, but because she refused to play by their rules.
When you tell the truth, you have to deal with the repercussions of the truth. We black out here. We can't come out here and do it any kind of way we want to. Listen to me. Your husband can't be the Sydney that he really is out here.
Let me tell you something.
That flexing, we gotta flex a different way. We out here in a game. This the money game. This ain't the black man's game. This ain't the white man's game. This is the money game.
But
we in the money game.
But Monique had the last word.
For the money game, it's called the integrity game. And we've lost the integrity worrying about the money.
But
Monique had always been outspoken, but even she couldn't prepare people for what happened next. Her public battle with Hollywood exposed deep industry secrets, but when it came to unexpected outbursts, Chris Brown's 2011 meltdown on Good Morning America took things to another level. It started as a simple interview. Robin Roberts welcomed Chris onto the show to promote his new album, FAMEE. And at first, everything seemed normal. But when she brought up Rihanna, the energy in the room shifted. Chris tried to dodge the subject, but Roberts kept pressing.
What's going on now is that recently the restraining order against you that Rihanna had issued has been relaxed. Have you all? You can go to events and be in the same room. Have you all seen each other? Been around each other?
I mean, not really. I mean, it's not really a big deal to me now as far as that situation. I think I'm past that in my life, and I think today is the album day, so that's what I'm focused on. So everybody go get that album.
He forced a smile, trying to keep things professional. But Roberts didn't stop there. She acknowledged that he had served his time and completed his community service. But she also asked how he had moved forward from the situation. Chris barely answered before shifting the conversation.
I've been focusing on this album, you know. I think this album is what, you know, I want people to hear and want people to really get into. So definitely this album is what I want them to talk about and not the kind of stuff that happened 2 years ago.
Roberts nodded, but there was an awkward tension in the air. Chris had made it clear he didn't want to talk about Rihanna. But just minutes after the interview ended, everything fell apart. Backstage, witnesses claim Chris exploded in anger. He stormed into his dressing room, yelling loud enough for people down the hall to hear. And then, he allegedly grabbed a chair and threw it at a window, shattering the glass overlooking Times Square. By the time security arrived, Chris had already ripped off his shirt and stormed out of the studio. Just like that, another celebrity interview went off the rails. Some of these moments were heated, others were uncomfortable, but they all had lasting consequences. Whether it was an outburst, a reckless comment, or just being caught off guard, these interviews proved that one wrong move in front of the camera can follow a star forever. Some managed to rebuild. Others were never the same. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.